Endo 555 Employment Cycle. Endo keeps workers cycling through short contracts that end just before regular status. Employees approach 6 months, then contracts stop without renewal. The same roles reopen with new or returning short-term hires. Workers repeat this pattern without gaining benefits or security. Why do jobs keep ending right before workers become regular? Employers structure contracts below the 6-month threshold to avoid regularization. The 555 pattern repeats this cycle across multiple hiring rounds. Countries like France restrict repeated short-term contracts to prevent abuse. It remains one of the most controversial labor practices in the Philippines. Labor-only contracting. Labor-only contracting places workers under agencies instead of the company they serve. Workers report daily to one workplace but are employed elsewhere. Supervision and tasks come from the main company. Legal responsibility stays with a separate contractor. Why are workers tied to one company but employed by another? Contractors supply labor without full control or substantial capital. This shifts accountability away from the main employer. Countries like South Korea enforce stricter liability on principal employers. It remains a central issue in Philippine labor disputes. Minimum wage versus living wage gap. Minimum wage earnings fall short of covering basic daily expenses. Workers budget tightly across food, housing, and transport. Costs rise while wages adjust slowly. Households stretch income across essential needs. Why does the legal wage fail to meet actual living costs? Minimum wage is set through regional wage boards with multiple factors. Living wage reflects the real cost of sustaining a family. Countries like Australia align wage floors closer to living standards. The gap drives ongoing wage reform debates. Provincial rate, regional wage gap. Provincial wage rates drop significantly outside major cities. Workers earn less for similar work in different regions. Businesses adjust pay based on local classifications. Income levels vary sharply across locations. Why does location determine wage levels for the same work? Regional wage boards set different minimum wages per area. Cost of living and investment distribution shape these rates. Countries like South Korea apply more unified national wage systems. The gap reinforces economic inequality between regions. Exploitation contract substitution. Youths arrive abroad with contracts that change upon arrival. Signed terms are replaced with lower pay or harsher conditions. Workers face pressure to accept new agreements. Options become limited once overseas. Why do contract terms shift after deployment? Some employers replace original contracts to reduce costs. Enforcement becomes harder outside Philippine jurisdiction. Countries like Canada enforce stricter migrant worker protections. This remains a major concern in overseas labor protection. Union suppression, red tagging. Union organizers face accusations linking them to armed groups. Labor activities are framed as security threats. Workers hesitate to join or form unions. Organizing efforts slow under pressure. Why does labor organizing become tied to national security issues? Red tagging labels individuals as linked to insurgent groups without due process. This creates fear and discourages collective action. Countries like Germany protect unions under strong labor laws. It weakens labor representation and collective bargaining. Gig economy without protections. Gig workers complete tasks through apps without formal employment status. Drivers and riders work flexible schedules without fixed benefits. Income depends on demand and platform rules. Workers carry risks without long-term security. Why are these workers treated differently from regular employees? Platforms classify workers as independent contractors. This avoids obligations tied to employment benefits. Countries like the UK introduced worker classification protections. It raises ongoing questions about labor rights in digital platforms. Floating status. No work, still employed. Workers remain employed, but receive no assignments or pay. They wait for deployment without clear timelines. Employment continues without active work. Income stops, while contracts remain. How can workers be employed but have no work or pay? Companies place workers on off-detail status during downturns. Employment is maintained while operations are paused. Countries like Japan require compensation during temporary layoffs. It creates financial instability for affected workers. Backer system, Palakasan. Job opportunities shift toward those with personal connections. Applicants rely on referrals rather than qualifications. Hiring decisions favor internal networks. Access becomes uneven across candidates. Why do connections outweigh merit in some hiring processes? Informal networks influence recruitment and advancement. This reduces transparency in hiring systems. Countries like Singapore enforce stricter merit-based hiring. It limits equal access to employment opportunities. Delayed wages/salary withholding. Workers complete tasks but experience delays in receiving pay. Salaries arrive late or in partial amounts. Some wait weeks or months after work is done. Financial strain builds as expenses continue. Why are workers not paid on time for completed work? Cash flow issues or employer practices delay wage release. Weak enforcement allows late payment without immediate consequence. Countries like the U.S. impose penalties for wage delays. It affects worker stability and financial security.